YouTube? Welcome to Fred's Full Throttle. This week I'm going to talk about the pricing for the C8 Z06, share some of my thoughts, and talk about how this may or may not change things for the car. So first, the details. The MSRP for a 1LZ C8 Z06 is $106,395. This doesn't include any options, the gas guzzler tax, or destination and delivery charges. Now, the final piece of the puzzle on the C8 Z06 is in place, and we should soon be able to price out the car on the configurator, which supposedly is coming soon. Well, that about wraps up this video. Oh, there's more? People aren't happy? There's public outcry? Did GM miss the mark? Well, it's not quite that simple. So unless you've been living under a rock for the past few days, you'll know that the pricing for the C8 Z06 was released by GM. Every YouTuber, forum, and Facebook group has been pretty much a 24/7 stream about it since it's released. As you might have guessed already, it's not without controversy, and many people feel blindsided. There's a lot to cover here, so let's get right into it. First, let me set the stage a little bit. The Z06 has always been a top-tier Corvette spec, and for a long time it's also been not much more than a bump in pricing over the standard Stingray. As Chevy didn't provide pricing info until now, enthusiasts did what enthusiasts do. They speculated. People looked at historical prices, people looked to different models across generations, people read into the Corvette is an affordable and attainable car that anyone can buy mantra, and so on. Left unchecked, that speculation has been running strong for nearly 9 months at this point. From this speculation, many of these estimates were between $89,000 and $95,000, my own guesses included. Months of seeing those numbers repeatedly has led to a lot of people assuming this is where the pricing would be for the car. People base their budgets on it, people get comfortable with those numbers, and unbeknownst to them, they were really setting themselves up for potential disappointment. I fell victim to it as well, as recently as last week's video, speculating a little bit about pricing and what that would mean for what I could afford, and how to calculate tolerable dealer markups. However, I also asked in that video, what if the base price is $100K? Trying at least a little bit to underscore that everything about pricing was really just conjecture at that point. As someone who tries to be factual and accurate with the information I provide in my videos, this is one of those moments where I had a little bit of a miss. So the pricing was released, and it's roughly $16,000 more than most of those estimates, and that's for the base car without any options. Further, this puts the Z06 at over $40,000 more than a base Stingray. Factor in the trim, Z07 package, hardtop convertible, and immediately you're deep into the six-figure range. A lot of people are not very happy. Now, I'll spare you the chatter from all the different outlets, but in general, people feel a bit blindsided. People feel lied to. People feel, dare I say, a bit entitled that the car should cost what they want it to. With the clarity of hindsight, it appears that Chevy was trying to brace us for the price all along. Looking back, it's much easier to see where Chevy was indicating that this car was going to be pricey. They benchmarked true supercars like the Ferrari 458 Italia and the Porsche 911 GT2 RS. They designed and developed the most powerful naturally aspirated V8 ever put into a production car. They shared performance figures that are frankly amazing given the weight of the car, and they released a comparison against some of the most popular supercars out there and specifically pointed out the value that the Z06 represents. While never directly addressing the Z06's price up to this point, they've been building the case that the Z06 is a supercar, that you can destroy other supercars on the track with it, that it's quite a substantial step up the ladder, and it gets you into a more bespoke experience. Looking back at the interviews from the various release videos and previews put out by Chevy, they underscore the care they took to keep the car secret, to out-Ferrari a Ferrari, and to elevate the Corvette name. The focus they took to show the interior work, the glamour shots of all that carbon fiber, the luxurious side of that car, wasn't just idle marketing. They were telling us that this car is truly a peer with its upmarket rivals from Porsche, Ferrari, and McLaren. Now, something that stood out to me the day after the pricing was announced was how the professional automotive media was receiving the news. Several outlets commented at the value that the car represents, that the pricing undercuts rivals by a significant margin, and that a fully loaded Z06 is under $160K, which is below the base price of a new GT3. There were many, but Motor Trend's headline read, "It features the most powerful production flat-plane crank engine and is quite the bargain compared to rivals." GM Authority writes, the Corvette is renowned for offering world-beating levels of performance at a price point that significantly undercuts the competition, and GM Authority is happy to report that this won't change with the 2023 Corvette Z06. And Road and Track says, this is a premium of more than $40,000 on the base C8, but it's a relative bargain for supercar performance. Now, throughout those articles, not one mention of outrage, no talk of the car being overpriced, no complaints about any of it. So what gives? Is the media blind, or is there something else happening here? Now, for Chevy and GM's part, they've been in a bit of a no-win situation. Release the pricing early, and they would have been raked over the coals if they had had to change it later due to inflation or supply chain or rising costs. Just look at how badly Rivian got damaged by their price bump. It's still not even clear if they're going to be able to fully recover from that. But releasing the price so close before orders open up, and they didn't do themselves many favors either. People have grown impatient, frustrated, and more critical. Additionally, any good news to be had by the pricing, and there is some, which I'll get into in a minute, is overshadowed by the negatives. At a certain point, it's more like pulling a Band-Aid off quickly than the triumphant moment that it could have been. You see, the human mind doesn't like surprises. Psychologically, we prefer comfort over the unknown, familiarity over change, and we don't like being pushed out of our comfort zone. The big problem here, I see, is one of misplaced expectations and a disconnect between those expectations and reality. Furthermore, cars and money are both things that people are passionate about. Mess with someone's car or with their money, and it's a good way to make somebody angry. In this case, those expectations and that speculation involve both quite heavily. This is why there's so many upset people, so much rage, so much screaming happening right now. So although this isn't one of my deep dive videos, I figured that this was a very fitting time for me to provide my thoughts on what happened and to share a little bit of my own perspective. The day the news came out, I didn't see it until right before I went to bed. There I was, brushing my teeth, and I see the headline, 106K. Quickly, I opened the article, read the details, and I stood there for a moment. In my head, my only thought was, oh man, I really wanted those carbon ceramic brakes. Mentally, I was taking them off the list for my build, and then I went about getting ready for bed. The next morning, however, I woke up early and just laid there in bed for a while thinking about the car. I was surprised by the price. I did feel like it seems like a lot. However, the more I thought about it, I realized that the Corvette is evolving, and it's growing up to match its rivals. For years, people have been saying the Corvette needs to be more special. It needs to have a better interior. It needs to be faster on the track. It needs to show those companies over the pond that us Americans know how to do more than just drive in a straight line or only make left turns. Chevy has slowly and steadily made good on every one of those maxims. But that comes with a price. The last 2 years aside, the current inflation and supply chain issues aside, the raw materials and logistics problems aside, performance costs money, and frequently lots of it. Ask anyone who races or does track days often, speed costs money. The first LT6 test engines were running way back in 2015. Let that sink in for a second. That's 7 years ago, which I'm going to remind you is only the second year of the C7 and the first year of the C7 Z06. And the C8 Z06 motor was actively being developed. That's 7 years without making a return on that R&D work. 7 years of paying salaries, designing, testing, scrapping, redesigning, all for a car that is only now becoming available for sale. Now think for a second, if Ferrari announced that their latest and greatest car, the F8 Tributo, was going to cost $106K base, roughly 1/3 of the cost that the car is now. Would anyone be upset? Well, besides those collectors who prefer that exclusivity. Ferrari would be heralded as a trendsetter and celebrated as somehow cracking the code on an affordable supercar. That's what the Z06 represents, and it's pretty darn close for 1/3 of the price. Now there are some good surprises buried in the pricing. For one, Carbon Revolution somehow managed to keep the carbon fiber wheels at a much lower price than expected, with projections running really between 18 and 20K based on that GT500, and the reality being only a little more than half of that. Also, expectations aside, this car has a heck of a lot of performance for the money. So at this point, I think that the ball is in Chevy's court. Since I sit 2 to 3 years out in line at McMulkin, I have the luxury of being picky. The Z06 is going to have to earn my money. To part with that money, Chevy's going to have to prove a few things to me. They have to prove all the performance things that they've claimed. They have to demonstrate that the car is a monster on the track. Those transmission problems with some of the C8 Stingrays, those better be fixed. Reviews? Yep, it's going to have to crush them. Chevy, I want you to blow me away and deliver on everything that you said you would do. So far you have, and the car is done, so now it's just a matter of putting rubber to the road to show me, to show us. That will be what justifies the price to me, and ultimately what will make me decide to indeed pony up for the car. Now I do plan to cover quite a bit more on the subject, as I think there's a lot more to be said. I plan to cover at least my own build and a breakdown of where my own head's at, and some of the tough cuts I may need to make in order to afford it. And then more importantly, how people can or can't justify the car, and probably a couple other angles on the subject. In the meantime, if you have questions on the Z06, the pricing, or anything in general, or you want me to cover certain aspects of this, please leave those questions in the comments, and the more thumbs up I see on it, the more likely I'll try to add it into one of my videos. But for now, I know this is getting long, so thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, Fred out!